Cruz technically won all of Colorado's delegates, but the math breaks down a different way. He's leaving Colorado with at least 30 delegates. 4 other delegates getting sent to the RNC are listed unpledged, but were nominated as Cruz supporters. And then there are 3 party leaders who are unpledged until they get to Cleveland in July. One of those is Colorado GOP Chairman Steve House, who is joining us today. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. We're also joined by Krista Kafer, co-host of Kelly and Kafer on KNUS Radio. So thank you for being here. I know you've never been a Trump supporter, but we have to start with this tweet that went out, Steve, that said we did it, hashtag never Trump. That went out from...
It went out from our account, but
yes,
we did not send it out. So we are doing an investigation right now to find out how it got out, because we would never do that. There's no point in trying to, disenfranchise a campaign that we supported while they were here, that was very gracious in letting us know that we did a great job for them while they were here at the Trump campaign. And there's no way anybody on my staff, certainly not me, would ever put that out.
Do you know how many people have access to that account? I mean, are you saying you were hacked?
We've got a process going on to find out who actually knew the password to that account. It's a small number of people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was one of those people. It may have been somebody from the outside.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, it wasn't you. We're down to knowing exactly when the tweet went out, and we know the IP address that it went out from. It's only a matter of time before we figure out how it came out.
Well, let me ask this, because I can tweet from my account. I can tweet from the Denver 7 Politics account for Politics Unplugged. I just have to make sure which one is checked. Are you saying it's just not that simple, that someone on the staff accidentally meant to put it on their personal page, but it ended up on the Colorado GOP?
That was the very first thing we checked, and we found no evidence that that happened, because really the person who does all of our tweeting at this point is our communications director, and he definitely didn't do it. And so if somebody had TweetDeck loaded on a laptop and it had a password from the past, that was the other concern, was to somebody who used to work here have it on TweetDeck, and that's how it happened. We found no evidence that that happened that way either, but we're close to figuring it out.
Right. Well, no matter what, it went out all over the country. A lot of people were talking about it. Does it taint Colorado's process yesterday in any way?
I talked to the Trump campaign last night and also this morning. They know we didn't do it. They know that we wouldn't do it. I mean, they know who I am. They know our staff. They've gotten to know our staff. In today's world, the guys who provide security on electronics are a little bit behind the guys who are hacking it. So I don't know if it's a complete hack yet, but the reality of it is you can't protect yourself from everything in today's world. And it was very passionate yesterday, so I'm not surprised somebody tried to make a play like this.
Krista, you're a Cruz supporter. Did it matter to you that you only heard from Ted Cruz and not any of the other candidates? Could something have swayed you or any of the people you know if Donald Trump would have shown up?
If he had maybe shown up as a different person, that might have worked. But yesterday was electric. 8,000 people in one room. It was a great speech. Darrell Glenn also gave a great speech. Great speeches do matter, but I think most people are looking at the character as a whole package. Who is their, what is their character? What have they done? What do they know about the policies? And if they know a lot and they're a good person, more than likely that's the person that they've picked. And that's what I think most of the delegates picked yesterday, was people who would pick somebody with integrity.
But there are Trump supporters in Colorado. I'm sure you hear them on the radio. You see them out. Do you feel like yesterday's vote was a fair representation of Colorado people?
I counted 15 red hats in the audience. I'm certain there were a few more than that, but there was not a large Trump presence.
I think my perspective on it is when Stephen Miller spoke, who's the senior policy advisor for Donald Trump, on that stage, there was a lot of people who were clapping and supporting his ideas. I've heard from a lot of Trump supporters in the last 24 hours. I know that they're here. Is this process the perfect process for people to be completely represented? We're talking about a caucus process that's complicated. If you understand how it works, you can use how it works to your advantage. And I think, activists who do understand did a great job of that on the Ted Cruz side. I don't know that the Trump campaign understood completely how it worked in the process, but I do believe if we had a statewide presidential primary vote, it would have been very interesting to see what the results would have been.
I will argue that the general public probably doesn't know how the process works, so let's talk about the idea of neither candidate or any of the 3 candidates getting enough delegates to get to that magic 1237 number. From a general voter standpoint who doesn't know caucuses, why is it not, okay, you didn't get to 1237, whoever has the most, you're our nominee?
Well, because in history, the rules have always been set up a certain way, and you have to get, for example, yesterday, right, we elect a national committee woman based on a plurality of votes. But in every race that is a state elected office, you must win a majority. And in a presidential campaign, if we were running it as a local state campaign, you have to have a majority because a plurality is not enough. If you have enough people running, you can dilute what happens with a plurality vote. That's why on the national level at the RNC, it must be a majority, just like any state race we do.
Well, in 1976 it is when the last time we had a contested convention. We've had these throughout the history of our party. It may not be pretty, but from a talk radio host's perspective, it can be a lot of fun.
And if you're John Kasich, what's he doing? Why is he hanging in the race? What do you think he's vying for?
He's hoping for that contested convention, and that somehow during the crazy plays for votes, perhaps he gets a majority, or perhaps he's running for vice president. Hard to say.
I think my belief on the Governor Kasich campaign is the second ballot, 55% of the delegates become unbound. If they can't decide between Donald Trump and Senator Cruz, that if they're looking for a third candidate, I think he wants to be an option in that scenario. He's got a great track record as governor of Ohio. His polling against Hillary Clinton, both in Colorado and nationally, is very strong as well. His campaign knows that. Obviously, it will take a very unusual situation in Cleveland for him to become the nominee, but he's a presidential candidate. He's worthy of it, so why not?
Well, to the Senate race now, because, again, the general public may not know what a big deal happened at the convention yesterday from the 4,000 or so people who voted to decide who was actually going to make the ballot for U.S. Senate to take on Senator Michael Bennet. A huge shakeup. El Paso County Commissioner Darrell Glenn is the only candidate who went to the convention who will be on the primary ballot. He prevented the favorite, State Senator Tim Neville, from getting enough support. So just for that, what in terms for Colorado does that mean? What kind of shakeup? What should people take from this? What result will we have from this?
He gave a fantastic speech, so I'm not surprised that he got the votes. He was terrific, and he's been at this the longest. He joins then a slate of candidates that petitioned on. Now we have a smaller group of people to see in debates, and I think ultimately we'll come out with a great candidate.
We have a graphic that shows the four who also have petitioned to get signatures onto the ballot. We'll know by the end of the month if they also make the primary ballot. Jack Graham, John Kaiser, Robert Blaha, and Ryan Frazier. What does this mean with the less crowded race? Is Darrell Glenn automatically the front runner, Steve?
I don't think he's automatically the front runner. I think the discussion we had earlier, that what we've seen as a trend is people don't like politics right now. I think the rise of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump is an indication of that because they're outsiders. What we saw in the last week was people who gave great speeches. The response from the voters was, I'm inspired by that, because they're uninspired by politics in general. So I'm inspired by that great speech, so I'm going to follow that. And we saw people who unexpectedly rose up and got a large number of votes in a number of different races at the Congressional District Assembly, and then, of course, Darrell Glenn yesterday. Darrell Glenn is clearly worthy of it. He's worked hard. He's a great speaker. He knows the subject. He's been elected before. But impassioned or passion and inspired speaking is going to be a key going forward.
And we're out of time, but what do we watch for next? People who are watching Colorado politics, what's the big thing to watch for next?
I think we're going to start to see Cruz continue to move up. I think that probably Trump has peaked and will move down. Also, I think people are going to be anxious to decide among these remaining Senate candidates. People felt optimistic yesterday. At least that's the vibe I got in the room. I'm kind of excited.
Steve?
I'm excited as well. I think what happens on the next primary date, the 19th, is going to be a key to see how New York goes, how some of the other New England states go. But I also think that we aren't going to know what's really going to happen until we get to California. On the state side, really, really contested Senate primary is going to be good because we'll come out with a strong candidate. Any of them can beat Bennett, in my opinion.
Steve House, thanks for joining us. Krista Kafer, always a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.